Welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast that talks about the reality of teaching English.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk in ELT. I am here by myself today and fired up as usual. Well, I don't want to be a pot stirrer, but people keep saying things to me and I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, maybe I'm just getting pushed into being this kind of rebellious, I do what I want type of person. Maybe it's just ingrained in my DNA. Who knows? So let's dig into it, get down to brass tacks, as it were, because recently someone told me, a colleague, a person that I respect, and everyone's entitled to their own opinions, that I should not call my students clients. Okay, so here's the scenario. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to read the text exchange word for word so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. And I'm going to give you why that wasn't good enough for me, the justification, and I'm going to still call my students clients until someone can change my mind. I am open for debate. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this, but until someone gives me real good justification, then it looks like I'm just going to keep calling my students clients. I should note that I do call my students clients, students, and learners. I use them interchangeably, but typically when I'm talking to them, when people ask me for services, when people approach me about classes, when I refer to these people to other professionals in the field, or even people who are not working in education or English language teaching, specifically English language teaching, I do call them clients because that is my word of choice. So first, let's get into what kicked this whole thing off. And it was this text exchange that I was just talking to a colleague and we were talking about what was going on. And I said that I was writing a proposal and then there was like a question mark, and then I said, oh, it's for a client. And really it was for a client because in this person's interpretation, if they want to distinguish it this way, because I also do consulting for schools and I work for some schools and institutions and I send in proposals for projects or for various things. And institutions and schools for sure are clients because I'm not teaching them anything. They're not my students. So for sure, definitely they fall into the client category as I'm just giving them consulting services. Now, the reason that, so I think there was a bit of a miscommunication there, but I'll read you the conversation back and forth, and then I'm going to give you justification. So I said clients, and then the person responded, you know, you're politically incorrect to call students clients, right? Oh, I should do this. I'm going to do this as monotone as possible because without it's text messaging. So let's try and make this as real as it was. And I responded, nope, because this is a client consulting services. The response was, well, you are, meaning I'm wrong. And then I responded, I have a different view, but okay. And then the response was, don't call students clients. That's not accepted by our community, but okay, your risk. I know they're clients, you know too, but we just use a different term since we are real teachers and not some mogul from a huge franchise. Take that in. I just gave a join, I gave a thumbs up, and I kind of walked away from that conversation because honestly, that's fine. I mean, if you feel that way, if you feel that me calling someone clients makes me a, greedy capitalist and whatever, and that doesn't qualify me as a real teacher because real teachers teach students, and that's fine. That's this person's interpretation, and I accept that. And based on what I know of this person, which is not that much, but what I know of this person, they come from an academic background and work mostly with schools and universities and institutions. So that very much kind of guides or shapes the perception of student, teacher, or student, professor, if it's at like the university level. which is fine. But here's where I'm coming from. And I don't know if this is going to change anybody's mind, and I don't know if this is going to be useful, but I need a therapy session. So here we go with the episode. So I went on to the dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary and Merriam-Webster, and I kind of consulted around because I was like, well, maybe, because afterwards, after the initial irritation, I thought to myself, well, maybe my irritation is unfounded, and let's kind of investigate the difference between these two things. And I still think what I think, so I don't know. So here's the definitions for student. So a student, and these all come from Cambridge University, is a person who is learning at a college or university, someone who is learning at a school, somebody who studies at a school, college, etc. That's from Cambridge University. Well, I'm not at a school. I don't teach at a school. I don't teach at a university. I don't teach at a college. I guess you could consider my small business a school, but it's just me. And really, I say that I do consulting. So the definition of a client, this is the one that I feel is more appropriate for me. And this, the first ones come from Merriam-Webster. It says, a client is a person who engages the professional advice or services of another. Cambridge says that a client is a customer or someone who receives services, somebody who pays for professional services. Okay, let me just go into my interpretation of student and why I think it's not applicable for me and why I think client is more applicable for what I do. I'm not saying that everybody needs to change their terminology and they have to start using client. No, you can use student if you want, if you find that's more apt for your scenario. I also don't think that it disqualifies me as a teacher, maybe it does, to call my learners clients. But who am I to say? So when I think about and when I interpret and when I reflect on my experience as a student, it doesn't really resonate with what I do. And here's why, because there are implications of perhaps this maybe traditional, overly traditional interpretation of the word student based on the definition, based on my previous experience. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. Maybe it has the wrong connotation in my head. But here's what I think, and here's my perspective of it. I would love to have a genuine conversation with anybody to kind of suss this out. I actually never thought that this was going to be a big deal, but I kind of got scolded in this text exchange. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something a little bit, words matter. And okay, so maybe I'm, interpreting something wrong. So I think that in the traditional interpretation of like teacher, student, it emphasizes the teacher's responsibility for the student's learning and academic success. Well, that doesn't really resonate with me. First, I don't really work in an academic setting. I work with mostly people who work in business. So it's very practical and it's not a lot of theory, it's a lot of function. And in my setting, I don't think that I'm wholly responsible for students' learning and progress. I think that we both are, because that's the way that I set it up. I give students a little bit of autonomy and a lot of responsibility because at the end of the day, it's their language and they have to learn it. And their learning is their responsibility, and how much they put into it is how much they're going to get out of it. Again, this is my interpretation of it. So if we think student, teacher, I think there's a little bit of implications of responsibility there. I also think it reinforces this idea of a little bit of an imbalance of power. I don't know if power is the correct word here, but I can't think of another word that would be appropriate. Hierarchy maybe, but I think power, because when I think of my teacher, I see them as subject matter experts. They know something that I don't, and I'm at their will for them to impart knowledge in me. That was my experience all through regular school and all through university, all through teacher training courses, formal courses that I've done since, is that I'm taking the course. This is my teacher. This is my professor. This is my tutor. This is whoever. And I'm a student because there's something that I don't have. I can't really contribute that much. And therefore, I can contribute my opinion and my experiences, but in terms of subject matter, I can't contribute that much to the conversation. And I'm really looking to this person as kind of the sage on the stage. Now, that's not really representative of my reality because I see us both as equals. We're both subject matter experts. My clients are subject matter experts in their own respective fields, and I'm a subject matter expert, or at least I try to be, in English language. So we're coming at this both being experienced professionals, and there's not like, oh, the dynamic is unbalanced. I see it as balanced. I have one part, they have the other part. We got to make the parts fit together. Again, this is just my interpretation of the traditional teacher-student relationship. It could be wrong, but it's my experience. So until somebody changes my mind, then great. I also think that saying like teacher-student, it kind of creates this distance between the two people. And almost like, I hate to say this, but like almost like an authority. And I don't consider myself an authority. I just don't. I consider myself a permanent student, a constant learner, and a decent professional, but I just don't consider myself an authority really in anything. I don't think that I've accomplished enough to say that I'm an authority in this matter. And because we have that kind of distancing, because what I used to have as a relationship with my teachers is like, that's a teacher. My parents would always side with the teacher. Whatever the teacher says goes. And so I just don't, and I found that there was a lot of distance. It wasn't that we were unfriendly, but we certainly were not friends. And we certainly didn't have that type of strong connection that I tend to build with my clients, because I have to understand what's going on in their personal lives as well as their professional lives to be able to get them to where they need to be. So I also kind of think that until my experience, and I know that we're trying to change this as educators, and there's a big discussion and there's educational reform, but still students are kind of passive recipients of knowledge. They just kind of sit there and they have to take things in. And I know that we tried to change this, and I know there's a lot of moving forward, but I just, like when you say student, I just picture like little desks and everybody sitting there and waiting for the teacher to do, because that was my experience. And I tried to make the experience different for students, I guess. But still, it's, there's this culture of students waiting and just kind of being passively waiting for the teacher to guide them, to start the lesson, to move on to tasks. And that's not really the case in my classes. So, I mean, sometimes it is, but not always. And so I think if it's more the exception than the rule, then that doesn't really apply to me. And because we have this tradition, again, this could be a really traditional, antiquated, I haven't been in formal schooling since the early 2000s, like in universities and things like that. I've done other courses, but it's like professional development courses, not necessarily like an academic setting, sitting in lectures and doing things like that. I haven't really, though I do love a lecture. I just haven't done it in quite a bit. So maybe this is, antiquated and out of touch with reality of schools. But as I do still teach teenagers and university level students, they tell me about their experiences, and it still seems to reign true. So I just think that students in general, if we say that someone's a student, it kind of has this embedded idea that there's a little bit of a lack of autonomy and an agency for that student. And as much as, these teachers nowadays are trying to give students more autonomy and trying to give them more agency, I work with adults, and I encourage autonomy and agency from day one. Like, this is your language, this is your learning process. I'm here to help you along the way, but this is your journey. This is not mine. And I also think that because I do this independently, I'm not bound by institutional restraints like in a normal school. I don't have that. I can kind of do what I want with my classes and my clients, because I have the freedom to do that. I've set up my own business and I work privately with people, and that's what I do. So that's my interpretation of student. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I went through formal education. I think I came out good enough. Of course, there's things that I still need to work on and still need to learn, but for the most part, institutional schools and that whole process of being a student and having that type of relationship with a teacher and that dynamic that goes on, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that that doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to me in my scenario, and here's why. So business English learners, I will call them clients, and I will continue to call them clients until somebody changes my mind. I prefer to have a more business-oriented approach when I work with adults. I refer to them as clients because it emphasizes this type of approach that I prefer to use, with whether it be English for specific purposes or business English or whatever we're working on. Because in my mind, that approach prioritizes the learner's professional development and success in their careers. And so there was this interesting article written by Michael Armstrong from Carleton, I think it's Carleton University. And he was writing an article in response to someone called Ferris. I don't remember their name or the title of the original article that he was responding to, but his article, it was called Client Model for Business Education. And it wasn't related to teaching business English necessarily. It was related to more like university doctoral candidates that were working with professors and how we should treat them. And it was a whole dynamic. Anyway, he threw out some principles and they really kind of resonated because it made sense. A lot of the points. So I'm not going to get into the whole article, but if you're interested, have a read. Client Model for Business Education. It's by a guy, I think it's Michael J. Armstrong or Michael K. I forget the middle initial. Have a read through it and tell me it doesn't kind of change your perspective. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. We can have that discussion too. But I kind of prefer a more like business oriented approach to things because that's my background. I come from a background of business, not from education. And so this is how I see the world. This is my perspective. And I hold myself accountable for these opinions and the reason and that I hold the opinions and the perspective that I'm viewing this scenario from. But just because you have a different lens doesn't mean that my lens is dirty or wrong or broken. So I think we could kind of meet in middle ground, but okay. The other reason that I prefer to use the term client is because I'm focused a lot on relationship building with my clients. And it's built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding of the learner's needs, goals, expectations. And it's very mutual because there's no hierarchy in our relationship. We're equals. Not that that doesn't happen with traditional teacher-student relationships, but for me, it seems more akin to client-consultant relationships. I like to give them autonomy, and I think that if we have this kind of mutual respect and this understanding that we both have something to contribute to the sessions or the classes that we work in, it's mirrored in andragogical principles and active participation and learner autonomy. And so, again, I just feel like I work with adults. I see them as equals. They're subject matter experts. I'm focused more on the relationship to be able to get them comfortable enough to communicate what they need to communicate, to function, how they need to function in a business environment. And so I see them as clients. Again, that's what I see it as. I also think if I use the term client that, and this is not to say, okay, so this is also not to say that schools don't do this, but I think when I say this is my client, it's very clear that for me, in my mind, in my interpretation, because a client is someone who pays for services, I think that inherently that means they're paying for a service that is somewhat personalized. and that takes into consideration their unique interests and needs, and into the fact that they are subject matter experts, and that I'm offering a service to them that is, if I could describe the service that I offer to them, it's giving them the ability to proficiently articulate their expertise in English. That's it. Sometimes that's heavily focused on language. Sometimes it's not. So I don't know if that if I can call myself a teacher. I prefer to think of more of like a language consultant. Like here's the language. Yes, I can help you with that, but also there's a lot of other factors that kind of play into that. So I'm not saying that private schools can't personalize and they don't emphasize personalization in teaching. Not saying that. I'm saying that for me, my interpretation of client consultant relationship is better linked to that idea, perhaps. I also prefer to use the word client because it really, and this is like a point of pride for me. Maybe I need to remove my ego a little bit more, but a point of pride for me is providing excellent client service, support, customer service, if you want to call it that. That is like a non-negotiable for me, and that's something that I really find to be super, super important. Customer service for me, for my clients, is like promptly responding to any of their questions, providing them timely feedback, giving them support, addressing concerns, and all that type of stuff. I'm not saying schools don't do this. They might, and that's great. And I think probably a lot of small private schools, when they're run really well, that they do this very well as well. It's not something unique to me by any way, shape, or form. But one point of pride is that I'm always available. If you contract me as a consultant to help you out with language, with navigating the professional arena that you have to function in, I'm going to be there for you. Literally almost 24/7, unless I'm sleeping. And my clients know this. They know that they can send me messages and emails and small things, not like huge things. Usually we tackle like the big problems in our sessions, but small things, they can send it to me whenever. And so I think there's a difference, because that's not a normal relationship that you would have with a teacher student. You contract me and I'm going to say, all right, anything you need related to language, related to kind of interactions and communications, I'm here. Let me know. Again, I find that to be different than what I picture in my head as a student-teacher relationship. I could be wrong. Open to the conversation, as always. I think that also when I refer to my students as clients, it emphasizes the fact that they're taking sessions with me, they're contracted me for these services because we're focused on their professional development, which is something that may or may not happen in regular schools. So I like to, because it's their professional development, we have to focus on their communicative competence, cultural awareness, ability to function in high stress situations, using English as a business lingua franca. I sometimes work with people not only using my teacher training, but also I've had the privilege of working in business prior to this. I've been through management courses, and I worked for a small company that flew me out to do training courses and sessions and stuff like that. I participated in a lot of professional development that happened back in the States. It's been over a decade, but principles still reign true, even if the method of delivery might have changed. And so I don't only rely on my expertise in the English language, and I don't only use, I guess I could say, I don't only rely on or use my teacher training. I also use the things that I was exposed to when I was working in business, when I worked in corporate America, when I worked for small doctor's offices, when I worked for a placement agency as a headhunter, when I worked in the accounting department. Like, I use all of these experiences to help them navigate professional situations as well. And again, I'm not always focused on the language. Is language the priority? Yes, of course, because communication is the priority. However, there's a lot of other things that I can incorporate, and I have the privilege of incorporating, and this is why I see them more as clients as opposed to students, because I'm not just teaching them language. And finally, one of the other reasons that I call my students clients, and maybe that's wrong, is that I do a lot of other work to make sure that I'm incorporating and basing the content and the courses and the syllabus that I create for my students to include company culture as well. So when people contact me and they say that they want to have classes, of course, I do the normal diagnostic testing, needs analysis process, get some information, prioritize those things, look at the syllabus. But beyond that, I also do a relatively deep dive into their company. And I try to find the company values, the norms of communication, the communication styles. I'll get stuff from the internet, websites, social media. I also ask the students, of course, with non-disclosure agreements and all of that, embedded in the process too, and sensitive information being redacted from documents. So because I'm not interested in that information, what I'm really interested in is integrating these types of norms, values, communication styles, all of that into the teaching and learning process. And so when I go through the intake process, this is a part of it. I don't know if other people do this. Maybe they do. Maybe I have the wrong perspective. But because I do that, I find that to be a little bit more comprehensive than just a teacher teaching a student language. Like, I really try to understand the scenario and how we can cater things to that specific scenario, and then bump it out into a more generalized scenario. So, well, in business, we can typically say that this might happen, but in your specific area or in your specific company, within your department of this company, these are the norms that happen when it comes to communication. So I do think that that's a differentiation. And I don't think that that is included in the student-teacher relationship. And maybe it shouldn't be, and maybe I have a wrong interpretation again, but this is why I think that I should be able to call my students clients. And I don't think any of my clients have really gotten offended by me calling them clients. Again, it's just kind of my interpretation of the words and the dynamic that I'm used to developing with the people that I work with. So, I come at teaching not from a traditional academic background. I also try to recognize my faults and the areas that I need to improve on with professional development. I'm not immune to anything. I'm not saying that my way is right, and I'm not saying that my way of describing things, my way of doing things is the best way, and that's how all business English teachers should work, and that general English teachers would learn a lot from me. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying this is how it works for me. This is how I choose to run my business. I've been doing this for over 12 years now, and it's been working for me. I've seen successes with my students. My business for the past, because about 7 years ago, I left an institution, a smallest school that I was working for. But I have always had private clients on the side. And within, I left that school, and I think within 2 months, I had a full schedule. I didn't really market my services. I think I marketed them once. and that was it. I marketed it once because I had left the school. I needed to fill in some gaps in my schedule. But for the past 6.5 years, and this is not me bragging and saying I'm doing it better, I know what I'm talking about. No, I'm just giving you, this is what's happened. This has been my experience. For the past 6.5 years, my schedule has been full, based on word of mouth marketing, client recommendations. So I think that speaks to the quality of the services that I give to people. And I've never had anyone really say to me that they don't feel that the services that I'm giving to them don't work. But I also think that if I've had for 6.5 years, I've always had a full schedule to the point where I've also sent people away on a weekly and monthly basis and recommended that potential clients of mine go to another professional or go to a school because I don't have time. I think I'm doing something right. Not everything, but something is going right. And I don't think that me calling students, learners, people, clients is really having that big of an impact on the results that I'm having. In the conversation, the person did mention that it's not accepted by the community. And I hate to break this to everyone. I don't care if I'm accepted by a community. Would I like to be accepted by a community? Great. Do I think that I try to contribute as much as possible to the community? Absolutely. Have I always tried to be kind and friendly and welcoming and interactive and talking to people about, different things? And have I changed my mind? Absolutely. And I love getting information from other people. This is one of the reasons I started the podcast, is because I want to collect different perspectives, to understand people's experiences, to see why they feel the way they do, why they develop their schools and private practices and all of that good stuff. Like, why do you go into this and what kept you motivated and what findings did you have throughout? And I love this idea of collecting experiences and collecting opinions and trying to understand how everybody views English language teaching from a different lens. And so if my using client to refer to student is going to make me a mogul from a huge franchise, not a real teacher, and not accepted by the community, then I accept the consequences of my decisions. And until someone shows me something different, as to why client is not an appropriate term to use for students, I'm going to continue using it. And I am very open to the possibility that I am wrong. I'm very open to that possibility. But until you explain to me why I'm wrong, and it makes sense based on all of the things that I just said, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Because for me, for my business, it's working. And I would hope that the community would show me, the ELT community would show me the same tolerance of me choosing to use a specific terminology when it comes to referring to the people that I work with, as I show them the same tolerance as if you want to do it a different way and it works and you get results and you're happy and you're productive and you're giving students great services and your learners are learning and everybody's improved. Listen, that's fine. I'll show you respect and tolerance and show me how you're doing that, because, maybe there's something that I'm missing that I can incorporate in my teaching practice as well. But when it comes to running a business and using specific terminology, I just haven't found a good reason why I can't call my students clients. So until now, until the first semester of 2023, I'm just going to keep calling my students clients, because I think that terminology defines my relationship with these people more accurately than calling them students. But I do use, as just a little asterisk side note, I do use client, student, and learner interchangeably when I'm talking to peers. So you just have to show me and tell me why I have to remove one of the three. That's it for today. I don't know if this is going to be helpful for anybody else, but it was very much a therapeutic session for me. And hey, if you want to debate it with me and you want to have a conversation, I'm more than willing to do so. So thank you everyone for listening. And of course, I will be back with more interviews and episodes on Real Talk and ELT. See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. Want to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Kelly Pennington ELT and send me a message. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube or Spotify channel to stay up to date. And of course, take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.